Alrighty, today we're going to solve quadratic equations with the quadratic formula. So the last few lessons we've learned solving quadratic equations by factoring and solving quadratic equations by completing the square. Now with the quadratic formula, it's capable of solving any type of quadratic equation, whereas the previous two had some restrictions. So keep that in mind that this one would probably be the best one to use no matter what. A little vocabulary first. The quadratic formula is the formula that gives the solutions to any quadratic equation, like I mentioned before. We also need to learn about a discriminant. The discriminant is the expression b squared minus 4ac, which is found under the radical sign of the quadratic formula. So here's the quadratic formula. X equals opposite b. I know it looks like a negative sign, but we say the word opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So overemphasize the all over because that fraction bar has to be that long when you use it. Things to remember when solving quadratic equations. First and foremost, set the equation equal to 0. Then substitute all values into the quadratic formula in the appropriate places. Find the discriminant and place it under the root. And simplify the expression to find the zeros. With that being said, the discriminant is a very powerful little being because it not only is part of the quadratic formula, but it tells us how many solutions we can expect. So when the discriminant is greater than 0, that's greater than, it will have two real solutions, which means it'll have two x-intercepts. And as you can see from the graph, if you were to graph it, the parabola would cross the x-axis twice. Next option is when the discriminant is equal to 0. It'll have one real solution, which means one x-intercept. And lastly, it'll be less than 0. It'll have no real solutions, but two imaginary solutions. And as you can see, it doesn't cross the x-axis, so it has no x-intercepts. So again, when you're using the quadratic formula, it's nice to find the discriminant first. That way we'll know how many solutions we should be finding and when we can stop. So here's our first equation. X squared plus 7x equals 6. The first part of the process is get the equation to equal 0. To do that, all terms need to be on the same side. So I would have to subtract 6 first. When I subtract 6, my equation would say x squared plus 7x minus 6 equals 0. You have to do this first before you can use the formula. Next, establish your ABCs. A is 1, B is 7, and C is negative 6. thing we're going to find is the discriminant. So we'll know how many solutions we have. So the formula for the discriminant, again, is b squared minus 4ac. So we're going to put everything in its appropriate location into this formula. So b is 7, a is 1, and c is negative 6. So using the graphing calculator, I would type this entire expression in there in one motion. But at this time, I don't have a graphing calculator, so I got to follow my order of operations. But again, plug all of this, parentheses and all, exactly like this into your graphing calculator to get the final solution. In the meantime, 7 squared is 49. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. Notice I have a minus negative. So this becomes plus, this becomes positive. So that would be 49 plus 24, which ends up being 53. Sorry, 63. So my discriminant is, sorry, again, 73. All right, there we go. So since 73 is greater than 0, we will have two real solutions. So let's find the two real solutions. Let's write the quadratic formula first. So x equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, so I don't like something I did. All right, now let's put everything in place. So the first thing I need to write is opposite of b. B is 7, so opposite of that is negative 7. The discriminant goes under the root. That was 73. And then I need to add 1 down below with the 2. So now I would multiply 2 and 1. So I would have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 73 divided by 2. And 73 is not a perfect square. It's also not nice. It will not simplify. So this is a perfectly good final answer, just like this. So this is what I would call an exact answer. Now, to approximate it, to use the calculator, what you would do is write negative 7 plus square root of 73 over 2. And you would do negative 7 minus the square root of 73 over 2 and get those approximated solutions. So let's get the square root of 73 first. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, guys. All right, so the square root of 73 is about 8.54. So that's negative 7 plus 8.54 divided by 2 and negative 7 minus 8.54 divided by 2. So you got to take care of the numerator first. So I don't have a negative sign on this calculator. So I got to do 8.54 minus 7 and then divide that by 2 and I get 0.77 for my first answer. And then for the second answer, it's 7 plus 8.54 and then divided by 2 with a negative sign, so 7.77. So those are the two solutions. This is my approximated solutions. So be prepared on your assignment to provide exact solutions and approximated solutions. So you should know how to do both. All right, for number 2, 2x squared minus 8x plus 8 equals 0. Look at that. They've already done the first step for us, which is make sure it equals 0. So now I just have to establish my ABCs. A being 2, B is negative 8, C is 8. Now we find the discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac b is negative 8, 4 is or a is 2, and c is 8. So again, in your graphing calculator, please put all of this in there in one step. But I don't have one again. So without it, I got to take it in stages. So negative 8 squared would give me a positive 64. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. 64 minus 64 is 0. So my discriminant is equal to 0, which means I'm going to have one real solution. So let's find the solution. Again, write the formula over and over and over again until you have it memorized. X equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right. So b is negative 8, so the opposite of that is positive 8. The discriminant was 0, that goes under the root, and then a was 2. So the square root of 0 is 0, so that would be 8 plus or minus 0 over 4. So it ends up being 8 plus 0 over 4 and 8 minus 0 over 4. Well, 8 plus 0 is 8 divided by 4. 8 minus 0 is still 8. So you see why it's one solution? They're the same number. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So the solution is 2, both the exact and the approximate. So that was a nice one. But as you saw from the previous example, they're not always that nice. You're going to have decimals and fractions, folks. All right. We now have negative x squared plus 2x equals 5. So again, we must get it to equal 0 first. So we subtract 5. rewrite, we would have negative x squared plus 2x minus 5 equals 0. Also, what you'll notice is my leading term is negative. That is perfectly fine with the quadratic formula. If you don't like it, you're welcome to have added x squared and subtracted 2x to the other side. That is okay as well if you don't like the leading term to be negative. But the quadratic formula can handle negatives, so I'll show you how it would behave if it stayed. But again, you're welcome to change it if you don't like it that way. So our ABCs, A is -1, B is 2, C is -5. So let's find our discriminant. B squared minus 4AC all right, B is 2, A -1, C -5. All right, 2 squared is 4. 4 times -1 is -4. -4 times -5 is a positive 20. 4 minus 20 is a -16. So -16 is less than 0. So that means this will have two imaginary solutions. So let's find them. X equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okie doke. So b is 2, so the opposite is -2. The discriminant was -16. And a is -1. So everything has its place. Now let's clean it up. So that's -2 plus or minus the square root of -16 divided by -2. Now, to find the square root of -16, we've done these before. In your calculator, it won't handle the square roots of negatives. You'll get an error. So off to the side, let's simplify this. The first thing we immediately do when you have a negative number is bring I out in front. That way, it's now positive. With I out in front, you can now take the square root. And it's a perfect square, so the square root of 16 is 4. So the square root of -16 is 4i. So let's put that in the problem in place of square root of -16. Okie doke. Now, what I would do is clean it up and simplify a little bit. So that's -2 over -2 plus or minus 4i over -2. So -2 over -2 is 1. 4 over -2 is -2, but it's okay to leave it as +2 because this plus or minus sign covers both positive and negative answers that follow. So we're going to leave our solutions like this. So this is the exact solution. This one you cannot approximate because you can't put I into the calculator. Well, this concludes our lesson. Please do the extra practice problems on your own. For those who don't have a note guide, here they are. Good
Good luck.